Today, we're going to bless those God-given incredible baby blue eyes with the Z33, 350Z, V35, and G35 rear upper camber arms, aka RUCAs. Now if we scoot down under, the Z's are continuing to hang out while we do some undercover top secret work to squeeze out the inefficiencies that Nissan left on the table. Now whenever we here at Gktech are squeezing said efficiency out of said ultra freaking awesome products, we always lay that awesomeness out on the product page where you can find the latest information, FAQs, assembly guides, alignments, and anything else you may be dreaming of as we update it by the minute if we get any updates. It's going right there. But being as this is a 3-part rear end ultimate grip series, these three amigos do complement each other more than you think, with the rear knuckles being the bee's knees and offering the most amount of rear grip. Then you have the RUCA being the middleman that can get you the adjustments you need and even more benefits by allowing you to fit up the anti-squat bracket, as you can't fit the anti-squat bracket to the OEM arm. We'll cover the anti-squat bracket and the magic that ensues with it in the next video, but for now let's cut the goddamn yapping and get this show on the road. Now, as we like to do at the start of any install, is to look in disappointment at the OEM part. Look at it sitting there all smug. Anywho, enough OEM bashing. Start by zapping off the axle nut that's securing the axle to the knuckle. Whip that off and out of the way, then head down under. Get your fancy pants ratchet and zap off the hardware that secures the axle to the diff, getting them all out of the way and lowering the axle down, then removing it from the situation we've got going on here. Now that it is open and free, you can see we did this for good reason, as the nut that holds the arm to the knuckle is facing the axle. Who'da thunk it? Now, being as that we can't fit a light, our arms, our head, and a camera in a small Nissan wheel well, you're just gonna have to trust us on this one that we did indeed go in and zap that ish loose. Reach on up and zappity zap that end link nut off and set it somewhere safe for now, then move that up and out of the way. Get your little electrified zapping friend and head up to the nut and bolt that secures the arm to the subframe. Set your little friend in position and zap that hardware out, and obviously do the same thing for the other side as well. Now awkwardly, and whilst squinting your eyes from all that crud getting into them, and also whilst laying out a string of expletives that anybody would be proud of, stick your longest pry bar in as best you can and pop the arms out of the subframe and somehow Lego maneuver them out of the rear suspension jungle that Nissan has going on up there. Now the first thing you'll notice is the tiny volcano that is stuck on the OEM RUCA that we are playing with on the screen. This typically goes onto the tapered section of the knuckle that you can see us showing you on the screen as well. Lucky for you, you don't need this little Mount Vesuvius, as we've incorporated this tiny volcano into the hardware we provide with the arms. So that is one less thing you need to worry about losing, and now you know about that one less problem that Jay-Z was probably talking about. Anywho, throw that shank into its home in the knuckle, throw the washer and nut on, get your favorite little electronic zapping device, no, the other one, and zap that nut up so it's nice and tight, then finish it off with tightening and torquing to the specs shown right here on the screen. Now that that's been installed, we can go back to the bench, let that little electric zapper hang 5 while we run through adjusting the arms. So with the adjuster in the middle position, as you can guess, the camber setting is at its OEM length, but if you were to push the adjuster outwards from the car and arm, you would be at the maximum length, which is giving you around 10 millimeters, which equates to roughly positive 2.25 degrees of adjustment depending on your setup. Now if you were to go the complete opposite direction of that, that would be negative 10 millimeters, which is around negative 2.25 degrees as well, again depending on your setup as well as some other factors mixed in. Now before anyone asks, yes, you can adjust these on the car just by pushing and pulling based off what you need, which is the main reason we wanted to have the adjustment at the front arm, so it's nice and easy. This can be seen in our little sweet demo here, brought to you from the future when the arm is installed. Anywho, we need ours at the vanilla ice cream OEM setting, which is where we're going to leave it. Once that's done, just tighten and torque the bolts to the specs shown right here on the screen. Insert your inserts that came with the arm into their little homes. Now we can go ahead and throw this back on Le Whip. Swing the arm into the most majestic and confusing of orientations to get it through the rear suspension jungle and put the arm in place. Once in, throw one bolt through, securing the arm to the subframe, and then pop the end of the arm onto that nifty shank we installed earlier. Throw the other side bolt through the other side as well, as you can see we're doing on the screen here. Then go ahead and wind on the respective nuts on each side of the bolts you just threw up. Get your handy dandy torque wrench and tighten and torque these main bolts down to the specs shown right here. Now, super pro tip, whilst you're in here and installing the arms, you want to make sure that the head of the bolt that secures the coilover to the knuckle is on the RUCA side. Reason being is if it's on the other side, the overhang of the bolt may make contact with the RUCA while the suspension rotates and moves around, and that will cause a bad day. In our case, the coilover nut is welded to the base, so we just need to turn our coilover, wind that bolt through, and tighten and torque that sucker to the specs shown right here. Head back down to the outside of the arm and push that down onto the shank, ready for that bolt that secures it down. Now, before throwing said bolt in, you want to get a nice big handful of thread sealant and goop that all over the threads of said bolt and install it into the shank. You do not want this going anywhere, I promise. Next, tighten and torque that bolt down to the specs shown here as well. Go underneath and throw said link pin up and onto its new home on the RUCA. Then wind the nut on, hold the inside of the link pin with a spanner, and tighten and torque the nut to the specs shown on the screen. Now it's time to reinstall the axle to the hub, unless you want to surprise the driver on his first clutch kick. Push that thing through one side and secure it on the diff flange on the other side. Now throw all the bolts, washers, and nuts through the axle flange, tightening and torquing them to the specs shown here on the screen. Another pro tip, once tightening one nut after the other and you come around to start, be sure to check and tighten the first couple of bolts you tightened to begin with, as they will be loose if you come around all the way back to the start. It's very important that all these nuts are tightened and torqued to the same spec, as you do not want this coming loose and being uneven. Head on over to the other side of the axle, zap that nut on with God's biggest socket and rattle gun, whilst obviously torquing to the specs shown on the screen, and hey, guess what guys? You're all set. Your RUCA is RUCAing, and now you have unlocked being able to fit the anti-squat bracket up. Word on the engineering street is that you're now invited to have more aggressive bump steer and a larger increase in anti-dive with that bracket, but only if you want it, of course. Speaking of bright lights, these are the bright sparks that throw these videos together so that you can see them enjoying their lives as much as their wallets permit them to. If you're ever in need of any help or you don't know something, just shoot us an email or reach out to a professional to help you install these. We'll be here for you. This has been Officer Dan, Johnny Caps, and DK with what we all know as the world's best how-to install videos. We'll catch you on the flip side. Peace.